Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That restless feeling you cannot shake, the one sitting just beneath your ribs like a held breath. Do not ignore it. The enemy is working overtime today for one reason and one reason only. He knows what arrives before midnight. It all shifts before 11:59 p.m. tonight. The waiting, the confusion, the silence that has been louder than any storm. But hear this clearly, because this is the part most people miss. It is not shifting because of luck. It is shifting because of what you have carried and what you refuse to put down. Think back to that moment this week, when everything in you wanted to react, wanted to defend yourself, wanted to prove a point, and you did not. You swallowed it. You walked away. You stayed quiet when every nerve in your body was telling you to fight. You did not know it then, but that restraint was not weakness. That was the moment you handed heaven the final piece it needed to move on your behalf. You did not delay your blessing. You completed the requirement for it. Something orchestrated today brought you to this exact message at this exact hour. The algorithm did not find you. The Most High did. This is a divine appointment, written into the fabric of this day before you ever opened your eyes this morning. You are standing at the edge of something you have been circling for far too long. Stay until the very last word of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the exact decree that cancels every assignment the enemy placed against your transition. I am going to show you the specific lie he has been using to make you believe tonight means nothing. And at the end, I will give you the declaration that seals this change so it cannot be reversed, delayed, or stolen. Do not scroll away. Your future self, the version of you that is already living in what is coming, is asking you to stay. If you leave now, you may leave seconds before the verdict is read in your favor. My name is Zarakiel. I have spent years studying the hidden patterns of the spirit realm. The warfare, the divine setups, the weapons most chosen ones are never taught to use. And I have walked over 10,000 people through the exact kind of threshold you are standing on right now. If this is your first time here, subscribe and hit the notification bell immediately. Not because I need the numbers, but because the next message I release may be the one written specifically for the battle you do not see coming tomorrow. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere has not simply been still, it has been pressing. Like something heavy has been resting on your chest since the moment you woke up, and you cannot trace it to a single cause. Maybe you found yourself staring at a conversation on your phone this week, reading words that should not have stung as much as they did, wondering how something so small could make you feel so completely undone. Or maybe you woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and could not fall back asleep, lying in the dark with a thought you could not name but could not release. Or perhaps it was quieter than that, just a low hum of disappointment running underneath everything, the feeling that you have been waiting so long that waiting has become your permanent address. You feel suspended, like you are standing in a hallway between two rooms and neither door will open. And in that suspended space, the enemy has been delivering a very specific lie into your thought life. You may not have recognized it as a lie, because it sounds so reasonable. He is telling you that the reason tonight feels heavy is because something is wrong with you. He is replaying the moment this week when you checked out, when you stopped praying as hard, when you scrolled instead of sought, when you gave in to the exhaustion and let the discipline slip. He is taking that moment and building an entire case around it, telling you that because of what you did or did not do, the window has closed. The timing has passed. The change that was promised has been placed on indefinite hold because you were not ready enough, faithful enough, consistent enough. That is the accusation. That is the case the enemy is presenting against you today. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Romans 11:29 says, "For the gifts and calling of God are without repentance." Listen to what that means. The gifts and the calling. The promise over your life, the assignment heaven wrote for you before you were formed. Those are irrevocable. They do not expire because of a difficult week. They cannot be recalled because of a moment of exhaustion. God does not issue divine assignments and then rescind them because the recipient had a hard Tuesday. The enemy is trying to convince you that you have forfeited your place in the timeline. But God does not operate on the enemy's case file. He operates on the covenant. You are not out of the window. You are at the window. The heaviness you feel right now is not the weight of being left behind. It is the weight of arrival. It is the pressure that comes when something enormous is preparing to land. The atmosphere feels strange tonight, not because heaven has gone quiet on your behalf, but because the atmosphere itself is adjusting to make room for what is coming through. That moment this week when you almost broke, when you almost said the thing, sent the message, made the move out of desperation, and you held back, that was not failure. That was the final act of restraint that locked the enemy out of your transition. You are not starting over. You are finishing. What you have carried through this season has not been small. Let that sink in for a moment before we go any further. The people watching from the outside could not feel what you have been holding. The prayers that left your mouth in the dark when no one was listening. The decisions you made to stay in faith when every circumstance told you to abandon it. The mornings you woke up already tired and chose to keep going anyway. That is not a minor spiritual portfolio. That is the kind of weight that only gets assigned to the ones heaven has marked for something that ordinary endurance cannot produce. You do not go through this kind of sustained, invisible pressure unless what is waiting on the other side of it is worth protecting with that level of warfare. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the chosen one's mantle. This sacred guide reveals the 12 divine codes behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. The codes that turn the life heaven already wrote over you into the life you actually walk. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now here is what the enemy has been counting on. He has been counting on the length of the waiting. To do what direct opposition could not. He could not stop the promise. He could not cancel the assignment. He could not reach the covenant itself because it was sealed before your name was spoken by human lips. So he shifted his strategy. He stopped attacking the destination and started attacking your perception of distance. If he could make the gap between where you are and where you are going feel infinite, feel permanent, then you would eventually stop orienting yourself toward it. You would stop living like someone on the way to something and start living like someone who simply never arrived. That is the architecture of the delay he constructed around your life. Not a wall, a mirror that makes the hallway look longer than it is. But here is where it goes deeper. The enemy is not the only architect working in your situation. There is something God has been constructing in the very same season that the enemy believed he was using to break you. While the enemy was engineering a delay, heaven was engineering a depth. Because the version of you that receives what is coming cannot be the version of you that existed 18 months ago. That person was not ready, not because of unworthiness, but because of capacity. What is being transferred into your hands in this season carries a weight that would have crushed a version of you that had not yet learned what you have learned through every moment of this weight. Think of Moses in the wilderness. 40 years, not 40 days, not 40 weeks. 40 years in a desert that was never supposed to be his home. And on the surface, it looks like punishment. It looks like delay. It looks like a man who made one catastrophic mistake and lost everything he was supposed to be. But if you look beneath the surface of those 40 years, what you find is not abandonment. You find construction. God was not punishing Moses in the wilderness. He was converting him. He was taking a man who had been shaped by the palace, shaped by Egyptian power, Egyptian confidence, Egyptian methodology, and rewiring him from the inside out. Because you cannot lead a nation to freedom using the psychology of the system that enslaved them. Moses had to unlearn everything the palace taught him before he could carry everything God wanted to give him. The wilderness was not his sentence. It was his surgery. And what is coming next will likely surprise you, because it always does at this point in the message. The thing God was doing in Moses is the same thing he has been doing in you. The confusion you could not explain, the relationships that fell away without clear reason, the doors that closed on you when your gifts and your efforts should have opened them. None of that was random. None of that was the enemy winning. All of it was God systematically removing the Egyptian mindset from your life. He was dismantling the frameworks you built your identity around that were never meant to be permanent. The approval structures, the performance-based sense of worth, the belief that your value was proportional to your productivity. He was stripping away everything that would have caused you to carry what is coming the wrong way, because a blessing carried with the wrong framework will eventually crush the carrier. But here is what most people miss entirely. The stripping away was never the ending. The stripping away was always the preparation for the clothing. You cannot put new garments on someone who is still wearing the old ones. God was not leaving you bare. He was making room for what he was about to place on you. And the length of the stripping was not punishment. It was proportional to the weight of what is being placed. The heavier the mantle, the more thoroughly the old garments have to come off. This brings us to something that has been sitting underneath everything we have covered so far. Something about the way you have been measuring your readiness. Most people in your position have been asking the wrong question. They have been asking, "Am I ready yet?" But that is not the question heaven has been answering. The question heaven has been answering is, has the work been completed yet? And those two questions sound similar, but they produce completely different interior experiences. When you ask if you are ready, you measure yourself against the standard you invented. When heaven asks if the work is complete, it measures against a blueprint only it can see. You have been failing a test you were never meant to grade yourself on. Stay with me, because what I am about to share next is the part that breaks the cycle for most people who have been carrying what you have been carrying. There is a pattern that runs through the lives of almost everyone walking a chosen path, and it is so consistent that once you see it, you will never unsee it. The pattern is this. The breakthrough always arrives in the season immediately following the moment the person decides to stop expecting it. Not stop believing, stop expecting. There is a difference. Belief is the bedrock, the foundation, the substance of what you are standing on. But expectation, when it becomes impatient and self-directed, becomes a form of control. And control is the one thing that cannot coexist with divine timing. The moment you tighten your grip around the timeline is the moment you introduce friction into the very mechanism that is supposed to release the promise. Not because God is punishing your impatience, but because the grip itself is a signal that you have not yet fully trusted the carrier. And what cannot be fully trusted cannot be fully released to. Joseph understood this in a way that most people overlook when they read his story. By the time Joseph stood before Pharaoh, he was not standing there with clenched hands and desperate eyes, demanding that someone finally see what he had been carrying. He was standing there with open hands. 13 years of betrayal, slavery, false accusation, and forgotten promises. And he walked into that throne room with the kind of settled composure that only comes from a person who stopped holding their own timeline and handed it back to the one who wrote it. Pharaoh saw something in Joseph that had nothing to do with dream interpretation. Pharaoh saw a man who had been through hell and was not haunted by it. That is what positioned him. Not his gifts, his settledness. And this is where I need to confront something directly. The anxiety you have been feeling, the urgency, the pressure to make something happen, to produce some visible evidence that the waiting has not been wasted, that is not faith. I know it feels like faith. I know it feels like you are fighting for your future. But what it actually is, if you are willing to be honest with yourself right now, is distrust wearing the clothing of diligence. You have been working so hard at believing that you have accidentally been trying to help God keep his own promise. And God does not need a co-signer on what he swore over your life before you existed. Here is the part you probably did not expect to hear tonight. The thing that has been slowing your transition is not the enemy's assignment against you. The enemy has been operating, yes, but he is not the primary obstacle. The primary obstacle has been the weight of your own unresolved grief about the version of your life that did not happen. There is a dream you carried into this season. A timeline, a picture, a version of how things were supposed to look by now. And that version did not materialize. And instead of mourning it and releasing it, you have been quietly carrying it alongside everything else. You have been holding the life that was supposed to be in one hand and trying to receive the life that is coming in the other. And heaven cannot fully deliver into a hand that is not empty. This is not a failure. This is the final thing. This is the last unlocking. Because the moment you set down the picture of what you thought it was supposed to look like. The moment you release your grip on that specific version of the timeline is the moment your hands become wide enough to hold what God actually designed. The dream was not wrong. The picture was not punishment. It was simply a rough draft, and God does not build rough drafts. He builds the final version. He builds the one that lasts. So here is what tonight requires of you. Not striving, not performance, not a desperate burst of last-minute spiritual activity designed to prove to heaven that you are still in the running. Tonight requires surrender. Not the passive kind, not the kind that looks like giving up, but the active, intentional, courageous kind. The kind that looks at the unanswered questions, the unresolved grief, the unmet timeline, and says out loud, I trust you more than I trust the picture I built. I release the version of this story I wrote, and I receive the version you are writing. That declaration does not come from weakness. That declaration comes from the deepest kind of strength there is. The strength of a person who has decided that the author's version is better than the draft. The shift tonight is not just external. The shift tonight is interior first. Because what changes in you tonight is what creates the conditions for everything around you to change next. The exterior manifestation is always downstream from the interior surrender. You will not see it tomorrow and wonder why you do not feel it yet. You will feel it tonight, in the moment you say these words and mean them. And then you will see it unfold in the days that follow, like a dawn that was always on its way. Place your hand on your chest right now and speak this out loud, because what is sealed in the atmosphere is sealed through declaration. I release the timeline I built, and I trust the one heaven holds. I release every version of my story that I have been grieving, and I open my hands to receive the version that was written before I was formed. I cancel every agreement I have made with the lie that says I am too late, too tired, too broken, or too far behind. I am not behind. I am on the exact path, at the exact mile marker that was ordained for this day. I break every assignment the enemy placed against my transition. I silence every accusation he has brought against my readiness. My calling is irrevocable. My covenant is intact. My breakthrough is not coming. It is arriving. It is landing. It is here. I step forward into this new season with open hands, a surrendered timeline, and a spirit that knows, not hopes, not wishes, but knows that what God promised over my life will not return to him void. I am seen. I am held. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. And tonight, everything shifts. If this message reached the part of you that needed it most, do not let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not late. They are on the edge of arrival. And if you are new here, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next message may be the one written for the battle you have not yet seen coming. You found this one. Do not miss what comes next.